What is up, guys, and welcome to the Nexus. Today we are here with Howard, who came second at the recent premiere event in Salford with Palpatine Vigilance. How you doing, Howie?
I'm all right. I'm pretty stoked that I came second with it.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to have you on board after such a fantastic result. And yeah, today we're gonna delve into your deck choices as well as talk about your experience with the game so far and some other bits and bobs. So, without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So Howie, how long have you been playing TCGs for?
I've been playing TCG since 2009.
Wow, so 13 years. Where did your TCG start?
So funny enough, my TCG started with Pokemon when I was younger.
Classic.
But that didn't really last long, and then someone else introduced me to Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I couldn't get access to the shop, so we just played locally. And then I got into the Edison format, and then that kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah. So, what kind of attracted you to Yu-Gi-Oh? And were you like playing competitively or just sort of more casual?
So I was more casual in the younger years, and then I was on and off it until 2018. 2018, where I started really going competitive, going to the tournaments and stuff. And then I did win, but didn't win. Like, I made day 2, and then it got a little bit harder. And then after a few years after that, I finally realised that it's not really my game. But I do love judging Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's where I'm at the moment.
Is that something you do then regularly? You judge the sort of higher level tournaments, or?
So I'm not judging high level tournaments at the moment because I need to try and get my level 2. But when that time comes, I'll probably go more towards that.
Nice. Yeah, as a judge, I can appreciate that. We always need more judges for all games, really, just to make sure they're facilitated properly. And yeah, taking judge tests and stuff can be quite difficult and taxing. So good luck with that.
We definitely need more judges for Star Wars, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, well, the game's it's in its infancy right now, so and the judge program does look really good. If you want any information on the judge program, feel free to go check it out on Fantasy Flight. It'd be pretty easy to find information there. But yeah, we definitely need more judges. So what attracted you into the Star Wars world then, in that case, if you were a Yu-Gi-Oh player?
So after I cut Yu-Gi-Oh, I needed a competitive game to play. I do play Magic, but I only play the commander side of it, so it's more of a casual, have fun, socialise with people.
Mm-hmm.
My friend who plays the Wheel of Boba, he's called Gollum, he's the one who introduced me to Star Wars. I know enough about Star Wars to when a new set comes out, I can predict what's going to come out, and then predict what they do and what it does.
Mm-hmm.
So he got me to that. We first started with a Thrawn leader, which I think is the biggest mistake of my life, but we won't go there. I was beating him with Thrawn versus Boba, but obviously early stages of Star Wars, we don't know what was going on. Not a lot of access to cards. And then as the weeks go on, he was actually just destroying me with fire sprays, and I was like, okay, maybe Thrawn's not the deck for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, fire spray is definitely a menace as well. One of the strongest cards in the game, even still, I would say. So how's your experience been with the game so far then? So do you pick it up on pre-release or?
I only picked it up a few weeks after pre-release, sadly. I wasn't that interested into it until one of the people from the shop was like, okay, we'll do a demo game. We'll see if you like it. And if you do, you can just develop more into it.
Yeah, and so you had a tutorial game. How did you feel when you were playing it? Did you instantly think it was the right game for you?
So it was definitely the right game for me after a few games. I definitely thought Vader was more busted than Luke in the starter decks.
Definitely.
But but with the right pilot, you can go either way of the decks. I think they're as both as strong as each other.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that, to be honest, the starter deck products from Star Wars so far have been pretty good. Don't get me wrong, in the second set, the decks aren't quite as viable, the leaders, but I still think it gives you a decent sort of archetype compared to some games like Battle Spirits, for example, where the starter deck maybe only had 1 or 2 usable cards in reality.
Yeah, and they were structure deck exclusives as well. It was a shame because you had to buy the decks.
Yeah, and obviously with Star Wars for the structure deck exclusives, you can win them in the OP packs, which I think is
it's very healthy for the game.
Yeah, 100%. It encourages people to to play at locals, just to avoid buying the decks. But yeah, so overall, would you say it's become your main game now, Star Wars, or
it is? I'm definitely fully committed to Star Wars. I said this to someone last night.
There you go. Yeah, so it's getting all of us. It's getting all of us. But yeah, so thanks for that small short interview about yourself. Now we're gonna move into your deck list. All right. Okay, that is not your deck list. Excuse me. My apologies. That will be edited out. So, so first of all, why Palpatine?
So I only played Palpatine because it is my favorite character in Star Wars. Funny enough.
Goodness me.
As I said in the OPE stream, whether Palpatine was good or bad, I'd still be playing it.
So why is he your favorite character then? Because obviously
he's
very
the galactic. Evil. He's like most evil villain in the universe at the current time. He controls the entire Empire. I love the Empire over Rebels. I hate Rebels. Get rid of them.
Oh,
too much aggro for me. I hate it.
We can't be friends. We can't be friends. So you enjoy his character, and that's why you played him. That's a really cool way to approach the game. And obviously, it comes with its own set of challenges, considering Palpatine, especially in the first set, wasn't really a very strong entity. How did you find playing it in the first set? I know that's irrelevant to this, but I'm just interested.
So, in the first set, I only perfected the deck list once I played Birmingham, and I was like, okay, this deck list is set. The only things I changed around was the officials, and that was it. And then set 2 came along, and I was like, oh no, I've got to go through this all again.
Yeah, complete rebalance with some new great spells coming in and some nice units. So, all right, so I guess let's get into it. Well, actually, why blue? Because obviously, a lot of the standard that people are using at the moment for Palp is double command. But what attracted you to the blue side of Palpatine?
So, the blue side, I looked at the amount of removal blue has. I looked at Palpatine's ability and the amount of resources he flips on, and it just all came together. Because the idea is, if you want to just aggressively ramp to 8, super laser blast the board, and then you can do whatever you want afterwards as long as you don't have any pressure onto your base.
Yeah.
I've not tried green, yellow, or red, and I don't think those colours are going to be as powerful. Maybe double green will get as powerful as blue, because there's a lot of double green stuff that works with Palpatine. But the red side, you get a lot of access to removal, but it's all damage removal, and I don't really like that. And with yellow, it's kind of funny to change a harder unit, then sacrifice it in the same turn after you've used it. But it seems like it's a lot. I don't want to spend 6 to steal a unit while I can spend 6 to heal 5 and kill a unit, or play a guard and power. It's just, I think it's just too much to play yellow.
Yeah, that makes sense. So blue works into your style of play, would you say, as well?
Funny enough, I'm not a control player in any other TCGs.
That's interesting.
For Star Wars, it just clicked to me. I had a game plan. So
Star Wars definitely flips the script for a lot of people, and a lot of people seem to be playing things that they wouldn't play in other TCGs. Like me, for example, I play a lot of hand destruction strategies in this game, and I hate hand destruction in any other game, like with a passion, like vocally. But for some reason in this game, I mean, I think it's because there's the draw 2, it doesn't really have as much impact. So, I mean, it just seems like a less degenerate strategy, but I guess it is degenerate. I just, like I say, the script's been flipped for me with this game. So yeah, it looks like a really, really solid list. And so basically you're saying your main strategy is kind of to get to 8 and then to use Laser Blast to stabilize, essentially.
Well, that's usually the strategy. Well, what people don't understand is Palpatine is a toolbox deck. Once you draw your 6, you have maybe 4 to 5 different strategies of what you want to do, and then you resource the 2 cards that you don't go for the strategy for. So an example would be if I draw a Yaloran guard and then 3 random cards with a blast, my strategy isn't to blast the board anymore if I want to keep it. My strategy is to keep ground under control and deal with space with all the removal. So I'd be resourcing the blast in that hand.
Oh, it makes sense. So it's basically a deck that allows you to pivot depending on how you want to play, essentially.
Exactly. The other example is like if I draw a double resupply blast, I'll then draw 3 really good like turn 1 players or like Vigilance, for example. My plan would be like double ramp aggressively, soak all the damage up, blast, and then hopefully not have anything else afterwards.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So, how important? I ask all the players that use ramp strategies, and it seems like an obvious question, but if you could answer as close as possible, how much do you think getting early ramps with this deck impacts your win percentage? Like, if you don't get resupply or super laser tech on curve, does it affect you very, very negatively?
So I definitely think in certain matchups you don't need it, but in other matchups you definitely need it. So
what would be an example of matchups that you definitely would need to ramp?
Anything that can go big, so the Kira or Han Blue or potentially Boba Green, as I realised in the finals.
Yeah, makes sense.
With resupply though, it's a bit weird between the two, because if I'm against something like Boba Yellow, I want to draw Super Laser Technician instead of resupply, whether it's before or post board, because resupply is more rippable than Super Laser Tech is. But also,
Bodhi, yeah.
Yeah, Body Rock's a menace.
Yeah, for sure.
But Super Laser Tech does also count as a deal 1 damage and draw 1 card.
Yeah, which is very, very nice for your leader ability. Super good value, and especially if your opponent's trying to lane dodge and stop you from deploying Technician into your resources. So I guess the synergy is definitely there with that. Which card would you say you prefer? Because it's pretty up in the air. A lot of people say resupply is the better card, but
I prefer Super Laser Technician because it's also a body. In this game, tempo is everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you can deal 2 damage to a unit or potentially kill a unit and ramp, it is pretty good. It's the same for like if we play a 1-cost health unit and you go 1 tap, I'll sack the Laser Technician, kill that guy off, draw a card. That's the same thing as well, but you're drawing a card as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess there's a lot more play lines with Laser Tech in your deck specifically, which makes it more valuable for you when you're trying to figure out your game plan early, as it is a turn 2 play. But yeah, no, that all makes sense. So take us through your sort of basic strategies for the sort of 3 big ones then. So Sabine, how would you approach the Sabine matchup for your first 3 or 4 turns?
Sadly, it all depends on what I draw and what they draw. Usually my plan is Super Laser Blast or Bust. That is the game plan. But if they draw really badly, I can get away with your law and roll guard, and then try and stabilize with like make an opening, do a trade, and then take down the Sabine if I need to. Otherwise, the matchup is pretty hard. Everyone is correct. So the match is hard, but it all depends on what actions you do. You can't just like soak up a lot of damage first and then kill the units off. It just won't work.
So you have to basically be more concise with your plays and have a more sort of tempo orientated strategy, I guess, where you're removing your opponent's board as opposed to just soaking, like you said.
So early on, you have to either tempo a board out, aggressively ramp, or keep killing the units. And then when it comes to resource 6, I can't put a little dude out if they've not used ECL, because otherwise I am taking 6 damage to face with Wrecker, and I can't do that. So the way I like, dodge it is I resource like all the little dudes later on, try and deal with the board a little, and then if I do survive to see the laser blast, I am potentially just winning the game right there.
Yeah, because at that point, I guess you've got the advantage as far as tempo goes. You can start removing stuff and playing stuff. You'll have a lot more resources to play with. So yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's almost a case of hanging on and hoping that your opponent draws badly, which obviously isn't the ideal strategy. But I guess you would confirm that Sabine is your hardest matchup.
After this tournament, 100% it is my hardest matchup. I hate the leader. I wish it never existed, but we're gonna have an aggro leader in every game. So
yeah, 100%. And there was 30 of them at the tournament. So how many did you end up playing?
I played against one, lucky enough.
Well, that's that.
But it was unfortunate because of game 1 and game 2. Game 1 had no turn 1 play, so I already immediately took 9 damage from the space unit. Game 2, he just had more damage than healing. He saw double throw calls. There's not much I could do about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough, but you still got there. You still got to the top, so one loss isn't the worst thing in the world. So what about Boba? And I'm talking all forms of Boba. What's your main sort of way of playing? Obviously, Joshua's Boba in the final was quite a sort of unique take on the build. But I'm talking more sort of generic builds that you would expect to see at your locals and stuff like that.
So Double Yellow Boba is very popular in the locals, and there was a time in set 2 where I just could not win against it because my list was like very different from what you're seeing right now. I was trying out like a triple walker build of Timelies. I was playing 1 Snork just to see where it was, but I feel like Snork's really good, so I cut all that out. With the Double Yellow Boba matchup, you've got a lot of things you can do. You can because if you deal with the units on turn 1 and turn 2, cunning on 4 resources doesn't do anything, so you don't have to worry about that. But you can also just double, 1 ramp or double ramp, get to a Vader, stabilize the board a little, where you're at maybe 12 or 13 health, blast it all the way, and then afterwards, all you have to worry about is like fire sprays and the character Boba Fett and Toros, because they're the hardest units to try and kill.
Well, one interesting thing I've noticed is that you're not playing the Darth Maul. Is there any reason that you decided to opt out from using Darth Maul? Obviously, the Overwhelm has proven to be quite a good strategy later game. Like you said, you keep your units off the board for Wrecker, and it's the same premise, I guess.
So, obviously, Darth Maul's a good card. I can definitely see that. The only problem with playing it in Palp is I don't get another unit with it. And Palp wants another unit when you're playing like high-end stuff, especially when it's Vader. Because if I play Vader and get a unit, that unit that I get either is protecting me in space with the Sentinel, the Black Star Fighter, or I'm actually just sacking it off to Palpatine and stealing a unit in the same turn.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Maul Overwhelm, it is pretty nice, but I don't care about damaging the base. All I care about is stabilizing the board, then finish them off with the high-end stuff,
Like
and Maul
Avenger.
doesn't really... Yeah, Avenger being an 8/8 is ridiculous, but...
So that's basically your aim is to kind of stifle your opponent's strategy to a point where you just have critical mass and you're going to just kill them in 2 turns, I guess.
Yeah, and then I don't know, Maul's a weird one. Like, I could try it, but
it just doesn't really correlate with the strategy you're trying to.
No, it does. I could side it, definitely. I could see myself siding it instead of Vader for the Boba matchup. But if they're playing Boba's armor, then it kind of just dwindles it down. It's like it doesn't straight kill it anymore, and that's where Vader is just far superior, just getting another body. So
yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I think the general consensus is, if it was one or the other, that most people would go for Vader. Just like you say, that free play is very, very important, especially at a later stage in the game when you're spending 7. So,
well, I've even tweaked the deck where I can actually get a 1 and a 2 drop, which I only realised during the event, sadly. But it did come up, so
yeah, I mean that's definitely a strong thing to do, especially if you're, bringing out Scanning Officer and potentially resting some of your opponent's resources and stealing some smuggles. So we'll get into some specific cards now. Oh, actually, one more matchup. We talked about the worst matchups, but Kira, how do you approach this? Because this is kind of your best matchup, right? You're the superior control leader.
This is probably one of my best matchups, but it all depends on who starts the chain link. And what I mean by that is Kira does main Relentless and 3 Avengers. So if they start the chain link of Relentless, I basically just win. Because they go Relentless and I ping it to steal it with Palp. They have to Avenger, then I Avenger. They have to Avenger it back, and then I either have a power or an Avenger for that. And I also play more blasts than they are. They've probably resourced a blast. So I'm going to win at that point in the race. I'm going to have a big ship on my board.
Yeah, so essentially you're just playing tennis till there's no more answers, and then...
Yeah, a bit of a cat and mouse, basically. The one good thing that helps is a Vigilance milling for 6.
So would you say it's really important to, when you're playing this game of chicken, to make sure you're not the first person to lay out something big, or what? How would you navigate that?
With Palpatine, you can start the chain as long as you play another small unit, because Palpatine does require a lot of units in your deck to utilize his ability. So if I go like a Crumb first and they go Relentless, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start this chain, but if you put out an Avenger or power, this Crumb is immediately dying. So
yeah, makes sense. All right, so that's all the matchups then. So Kira, you found pretty decent matchup for yourself. Obviously, most decks are struggling with it, but there always in this game there always seems to be 1 or 2 gatekeepers for every deck that does well across the board. So definitely a nice time to be playing Palp with Kira being so popular. But yeah, let's get into some card choices then. So 1 Rival's Fall and 1 Fell the Dragon. So why are you... I mean, obviously you've got more in your sideboard, but why are you so slim on the defeat units?
I knew this question would come. Right. Okay, let's talk about Fell. No, not Fell. Let's talk about Rival's Fall first. Rival Fall is really good. Kills anything. Leaders, gone. But it is very clunky. It costs me 6 mana, and at the turn I'm paying 6 for it. If I'm against Boba Fett or Sabine, I'm just taking way too much damage. Obviously, in other matchups, it's free, technically, because they flip on 6 or 7. Or potentially it's a Kira that flips on 5, and I'm all right with that. But Rival's Fall, I just think it's too clunky, especially if you go through the ramp stages. If you double ramp, you're skipping, you go 3, 5, 7, and I kind of want a Vader over Rival's Fall at that point. And if I ramp once, I kind of want a Vigilance over Rival's Fall, because it does so much more.
Makes sense, yeah.
With Fell the Dragon, though, this is a flex spot, funny enough. I had 1 slot in my main, and I was debating whether I wanted to play a Fell the Dragon or a Devastator. and I 100% knew Fel Dragon would come up more just because of the pole wreckers in the heroic matchups. But against Boba, the fire spray just dies to Fel the Dragon. So that is my reasoning for playing 1-1.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, for example, when would you side in the other ones, and when would you maybe side them out?
So I'd side all rivals full and potentially Fel against Boba Yellow, depending on what they're playing. So the reason for that is if I am against Phantoms, I really don't want to top deck removal spells. I want to top deck units. I want to tempo base to base, basically, so I can actually get rid of the units.
Makes sense.
For the rivals for the Fel to side back in, obviously in the Kira matchup, they're fantastic. Bigger matchups, really good. Fel is a 50-50 with Boba. It really depends on what they're playing in the side and the main deck.
Yeah, so what would be your... I mean, you've already alluded to it a bit. Your main targets for Fel the Dragon are kind of Poe and Wrecker. What about stuff like Crypt Dragon? Is that also... Crate Dragon, is that also what you'd use it for, or...?
100% siding Fel for Crate Dragon because it is what it's named, to Fel the Dragon. It's probably the best removal to kill it. Because usually if your opponent has a Crate Dragon, they're going to play around power. So at most, you're only going to take 4 to your base. It is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's that out of the way then. Scanning Officer, how did it perform for you? And would you recommend having it in your main board?
So Scanning Officer wasn't originally in the list. It was actually Regional Governor. I came to realise, there's too many problem cards where I have to name. So Governor wasn't doing it. Scanning Officer, though, there is so many smuggle cards that are meta playable. And especially when people are playing tech, it feels so good to rip 3 random cards.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how was its success rate when you were actually implementing it in the tournament?
I guess it hit maybe 30 or 40% at the time. Unfortunately, against the Kira player, I hit double non-pike and they couldn't play the Walker, so it impacted that game hugely.
Yeah, I mean, that tempo swing of losing those, because obviously the new resources, they come in tapped, that can really, really be a huge swing, which for me is like one of the most, the biggest things about Scanning Officer, how it's able to slow your opponent's turn down. You'd expect, in reality, it seems like it would be more balanced if the resources came in readied, but I mean, who knows what they were thinking.
It does take away turn 1 plays. It did happen against that Sabine player, but he did tell me afterwards that he didn't have a turn 1 play, so it didn't really matter there. Scanning Officer became the best in top 4, which is weird enough because I played against Boba, flipped 3 resources, and I was so happy to see a Fire Spray, a Cunning, and a Body Rock resource. Because I'm thinking in my head, okay, I've got 2 Cunnings, 2 Fire Sprays to deal with, and then that's game, set, and match.
Yeah.
That's all I have to worry about.
I guess information is key in this game, especially when you're playing against very, very problematic cards like that. Yeah, I actually watched that game, and he definitely didn't want to be charging those Cunnings. Like, you could see it in his face that he just had no choice. But yeah, sad. It was a sad draw for him on those games, I will say. But obviously, good for you. So let's get into some cards. We've touched on them a little bit, but I asked you for a top 3 of cards for their performance over the weekend. So let's just you can just have a little chat about them and the best way to implement them. So we'll start off with Crumb.
So Crumb, it heals 1. It does the same thing as Death Trooper does. It pings a unit for Palpatine to steal, but it's also just a little small dude that you can just sacrifice later on and draw a card. But Crumb pairs with your Lauren so well. You can perform a lock against unit-based damage leaders where you're like, okay, you're not going to have a unit on board because I'm going to kill it with all these blue spells, but I'm also going to show you this combo where I'm going to heal 2 every single time and you can't do anything about it. And most of the time people just like put the hand out and scoop to me. So
yeah, so it's kind of like an approach to take later game, right? Where you're just keeping tempo and just healing up to sort of stay stabilized whilst your opponent's trying to get back on the horse, I guess.
It has happened multiple times in my locals against some of the good players where I've been at 28 life and it goes over maybe 10 turns and I'm now at 6-4 life. It looks horrible for my opponent, but it's what it's there for.
Well, I mean, I guess the tagline "obnoxious pet" is pretty accurate for this then in that case. So would you say this is a must-have in any sort of command deck, control deck? That's Imperial.
So I'd say it's very optional for maybe if you're trying to get into Palp newer. But once you get into the late game of okay, I want to make Palp better. Slash Crumb combos with a few cards. Obviously, we talked about your Lauren that heals 2 a turn, but it does combo with Technician on turn 1. Because if you play a Crumb turn 1, and then you go Technician turn 2, you can kill the Technician with Crumb, it enters ready, and then replay the Crumb. So you've potentially maybe healed 2 damage or 1 damage there, and ramped in the same time, and you don't have to worry about waylay or anything like that.
I mean, that's a really, really cute combo in itself to use early games. So it definitely seems like it's got a lot of tools, considering it's just a little 1 cost. But yeah, so we'll get on to your second card of choice, and that would be the Royal Guards from the starter deck.
If you're playing Palp, you have to play this card. It is the reason to play Palpatine. I've seen some people say Palpatine is not Palpatine. Emperor's Royal Guard is not like going in Palpatine. It's a bait, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's a 3-mana 3/5 Sentinel.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone can say that's a bait. That's like
how is that bad? Like if you swap an official turn 1 and a guard turn 2, it's just like an unbreakable wall.
Yeah, I mean 3/5 is obnoxious as a Sentinel for sure, and yeah, I don't know how anyone could underrate this. So in practice, how many games would you say it saved you?
Royal Guard.
Yeah,
probably saved me every game. I'm not gonna lie.
Every game, wow.
Every game when I've seen it, whether it is turn 3 or turn 8, it has saved me.
Amazing. So don't sleep on this, guys. What a card. Every game, you heard it here. And finally, we've touched on it quite a bit, but just give me a brief conclusion on Super Laser Blast and how important it is for your strategy in this deck.
Obviously, we've talked about the strategy where if you aggressively ramp, you blast, and then control the board afterwards. It is pretty much why it's here. I would put Snork in there, but Blast is just way too important for this deck. Just because it's on 8 is where your leader flips, and if you need to tempo your leader out and then top deck a guard and then protect your ground, it's really important.
Very, very cool. Okay, so let's touch on your top end briefly. We've already talked about how important Vader is. And Avenger goes without saying it is the game ender for Blue Imperials. But what about Snoke? How did it sort of perform for you? Because some people don't like this card, some people do.
I don't understand why people don't like this card. I come from Magic the Gathering. We first saw this card and we're like, okay, we've just got Elish Norn in Star Wars Unlimited. This is absolutely busted. It is also an official for Royal Guard. I think this card is bonkers. You heal like 8 damage from it, and most of the decks you see today are playing 2 health units and 3 power, so it clears the board.
Yeah, so you can't see any negative to this card at all.
I think this card will see play for a long time. I don't understand why people do not like this card. -2/-2 is huge.
Yeah, makes sense, and it's good to make a strong statement about your views, really. So you heard it here. Snoke is good. Our previous interviewer Joshua was saying that it's bad, so
it can be bad in some matchups. I do give him credit. In the Kira mirror match, I just side it out because it's not really doing anything. Sure, I can go my big ship to his big ship and it survives, but then I've got to have that and a Snork on board. It's just not happening.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So, and Reinforcement Walker kind of speaks for itself. You know, it's such a great utility for healing and potentially drawing if you don't need the heals.
I do want to speak on this.
Yeah, of course.
I personally think so. I'm currently not playing Walker now. I don't know what it is. I know Walker's really good and it heals and it does all its stuff. I'm just not coming to the point where it's an open game state and I just want to slap it down. Because when I blast and they don't play anything, that's considered open game state. But I've taken so much damage to my base where I'm like, okay, I've got to save this amount of mana just in case he plays this threat. And if he doesn't play this threat, maybe I can play the Walker. But if they play like 2 threats at the same time, it just becomes clunky. I don't know how I feel about this card.
Oh, so essentially what you're saying is it doesn't give you the toolbox options you need in the later game when it's viable to start playing it, basically.
No, because my deck's all reactive and not proactive, so it doesn't like slip in. I am currently playing it's like an 8-mana 7/8 with Ambush, and that's been performing really good against Fire Spray because it's my only problem card in the Boba matchup. So.
Oh, that's the one that when you kill it becomes a resource, right?
It becomes a resource, so you can deny it from the graveyard from Palp Return. And we did get spoiled a new card, but I won't talk about that.
I mean, on that note, are there any changes that you would make other than that to the deck?
In the main deck, you can play around Fell of the Dragon. You can swap it out for a Devastator if you need to. Or if you think you need 2 Rivals 4 in the main deck, I'd say go for it. But in the main deck, I probably wouldn't change anything at the moment. Side deck though, I really want to try to create Dragon and maybe Palp's Return.
Oh right, yeah, just a Crate Dragon off just to completely
just slap it down. It does the same thing as Walker.
Just finish the game. Yeah.
But obviously it's 11, but if you're at that point in time, it doesn't actually matter. It also pushes the game to end in some sort of way.
It is definitely a game ender, either way, I would say. So let's talk about your sideboard options before we finish up here. So Devotion. We saw you double Devotion a Vader, I think it was, or your leader unit.
It's my Palpatine.
Yeah, your leader unit. How often did Devotion come up, and why were you using it? What matchups?
So Devotion comes up every matchup except for the Control Mirror. Devotion, I don't think anyone knows what this card does, but the idea of Devotion is what people got on my deck list very wrong. Is Devotion is meant for my leader. So the game plan is to blast the board against aggro or Boba, and then I can flip my leader without stealing anything as a tempo-based ground unit. Then, on the next turn, I can slap maybe 1, 2, or even 3 Devotions under it, and it becomes this clock where I'm dealing either 5, 6, 7, and healing 2, 4, 6 a turn.
All right, yeah. So it's basically specifically for your leader then.
Mainly, yeah. You can swap it on the smaller units, but they'll die too quickly. So, someone talked about that I'm slapping it on space units. I've never slapped this thing on a space unit unless I'm pushing for damage, which you saw on live stream.
No, it makes sense. So restock, I guess that's PTSD from set 1 mill out situations that you might have been in.
So people are still going to play the mirror thing with the Vigilances. Apparently when I go against Kira players, they resource all the Vigilances, which I think is wild. I should be getting milled out because it's the way to kill like big units. But it's just there as a safety mechanism. You don't have to play it. but there's a point where you come up against the Vigilance mirror and you're like, I wish I had this restock now.
And finally, Relentless, obviously an amazing card. What is your main reason to implement this from your sideboard?
It wins the mirror match. That is it.
The mirror match. Fair enough. I guess the mirror match is kind of toxic and difficult with the amount of removal you both have and sentinels, etc.
I've theoried mirror matches for Pulp, and it just doesn't. It seems horrible. I've never played a mirror, but you know, I've got to try and find another player who plays Palpatine for that to happen. So it's kind of hard to practice that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we do have Michael Silk, obviously. He was also.
Oh, we
in the
do,
top 4.
yeah.
And he's like you. He's a very dedicated Palp player. But yeah, any final quick conclusions about the deck that you haven't covered, or we've gone through pretty much all of the new cards, and a lot of the other cards are very standard. But is there anything else that we might have missed?
I've just got to say, Palpatine is not a leader you can just pick up. Also, I'm going to say it's very toolboxy. There's just so many players you can do with it. I've also got to say, Traitorous is actually not that bad of a card in Palpatine, but I don't think I'd play Traitorous in any other deck just because I can't utilize the stolen unit with my leader.
Oh yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean 5 costs is very expensive. In set 1, it was a very handy card, but I can see why it's kind of lost its stock a bit. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the deck list. So congratulations again on your 2nd place finish.
Thank you.
I'm just going to go back to the main screen to finish off here. So yeah, any shout outs to anyone that might have helped you achieve your amazing spot?
So I'm going to shout out Gollum and Lewis, who are my mates. They both play double yellow Boba all the time. And I have to first against it, and it does improve me as a player of what I need to do against those matchups.
Fair enough. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on and giving us a great rundown, in-depth rundown of your deck, Howard. Are you looking forward to the upcoming store showdowns and all that kind of thing?
I guess so. It depends if I can get time off. I'm definitely playing the one at the locals.
Fair enough. All right, cool. So, hopefully we will see you soon at the London UKTC tournament, guys, that has now been announced for the 28th and 29th. That will be 2 1K tournaments, back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. So if you can get to the London Grand Tournament, guys, please do, and come and support the new growing competitive scene of the game. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like it. Thanks for all the love on the channel lately. We really do appreciate it. And we are aiming to get to 500 subs as soon as possible. But yeah, is there anything else before we go, Howie? Or is that all for you?
I think that's everything. I think everything is covered there.
All right. So again, a massive pleasure to have you along. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.